Welcome to Shooting Straight with AMNF.com. I'm Frank Miniter, the editor-in-chief of the NRA's America's First Freedom. Today we have the incredible pleasure of sitting down with Larry and Brenda Potterfield, co-founders of Midway USA. Now, Larry, Brenda, I've interviewed members of Congress, governors, famous actors, but I've never sat down with someone who's done more for youth shooting sports or for our freedom in general than the both of you. So I know, Larry, you like to say thank you for your business to your customers. I think from the millions of NRA members, you'd like to start this off by saying thank you for all you do for freedom.
Very kind. Thanks, Frank.
If you don't mind, I'd like to start this back in 1992, because you did two monumental things that have been a foundation for freedom since 1992. First, you founded the NRA Roundup program by asking your customers to round up the next dollar so you could give that money to the NRA for the fight for freedom. And in the years since, just from Midway USA, you've contributed over $21 million to the fight for freedom. What led to this idea? How did you start this and then grow it?
I think first it's an interest in the NRA. So going way back into the early 70s, I think I've been a life member since 72 or something like that. So now we're in the business, so to speak. We start the gun shop in 77. So you're a member of the NRA, a serious member by being live, and you're running a gun shop and you're handling transactions. Okay, well, maybe you can get those transactions to include some money to change the future. Seems pretty simple. No computers back then, no internet back then. So, but we're taking phone calls, selling products and taking phone calls. And it seemed like an easy thing to do, easy to train. There might have been a dozen phone operators or something like that at the time. So we wrote it up, we trained it, and here's what we did. And it would have been January 2 of 1992, because we weren't open on the 1st. And we put it in our December catalog flyer saying it was going to start on January 2. And the first phone call came in and we asked and the customer said yes. Wow. That's 30 years ago.
A lot has changed since then, but a lot of freedom won since then. But also in 1992, you came up with the idea for Friends of NRA, also in Missouri. How did that begin? How did that conversation start? Where did the idea come from?
Well, with NRA Roundup starting in January, now here's the NRA show in Salt Lake in May or April, or whenever it would have been of that year, of 92. I've had contact with the NRA, most specifically Wayne Sheets, who was a staffer here for many years. We were sending a check in every week for $100 or whatever it would have been back then, because we're not a very big company. So, I mean, here's a check every week for $100 going to NRA ILA for deposit in the National Endowment for the Protection of the Second Amendment. Okay. And so we're talking about that. Well, it isn't a great deal, $100 a week. And I said, we can do more. I said, when we get back, when Brenda and I get back, we're going to call some friends together and we're going to have a party for the NRA. Now, there wasn't a name for it yet or anything like that. We get back home and start calling our friends from different key conservation groups to see who thinks it's a good idea and who's ready for a first meeting. And we put that group of 8 or 10 people together and had the first meeting. Just the rest is history. Jim Joy, deceased now, came up with the name. Let's call it the Friends of NRA. We're just going to have a party. It's the Friends of the NRA. And it's just a key conservation. It's a Ducks Unlimited or Wild Turkey dinner, but it's Friends of the NRA that are holding the dinner.
Friends of NRA has raised over $800 million to this point. From that very beginning, that idea has reshaped so much of our freedom.
Well, okay. I like that.
Now, you also do a lot for the NRA's Whittington Center. Can you tell us about what you're doing with youth sports? And
we've been to Whittington twice, Brenda.
Yes.
Okay, once just to look and once to hunt. I think hunted with Mike Ballou. Mm-hmm. What a fabulous place in one of the far corners of the United States. So we're always looking at things we can do. Brenda and I have been very fortunate that we make more money than we need to live on. Well, not very many human beings ever get to that point. We have. Now, the next question is, what do you do with the money? Well, we chose to give it away. Not everybody chooses that way, and that's fine, but we chose to give it away. And we chose youth shooting sports as our principal vehicle to give money away to change the future through youth. But here we're thinking about Whittington and thinking what we can do for Whittington that helps not only Whittington, but helps the NRA. And we're talking with all the staff and trying to figure it out. And we understand that Whittington, as it was created, the NRA funded it with loans. So here were these loans back to NRA that never good for anything because Whittington wasn't making enough money to pay them off. What if we would donate money to Whittington? They could pay off the loans. That would get off their books. And the NRA, big NRA, the NRA National, would have that money to spend on their missions. Well, seemed like a pretty good idea. I think it was.
Now, your Midway USA Foundation has given over $54 million to almost 3,000 youth teams. That's just astounding. How do you reach out to so many? How do you find them and help them?
Well, this is the 21st century, and we have this modern little tool called the Internet. And with the Internet, you can find out that there's 22,500 high schools and colleges in America. And ultimately, you can find out that 2,800 of them have shooting teams. There are 2,800 shooting teams with endowed money in the Midway USA Foundation today, principally because of the Internet. I don't know how you could ever find them without the Internet, but we know who they all are. We created that like 15 years ago, maybe
2007 or 8.
7 or 8, I believe, because it needed to be created. And nobody needs another mission. NRA doesn't need another mission, and SSF doesn't need another mission. Who needs another mission? And so we didn't find anybody that needed or wanted another mission. We were willing to write the check to get it started, but ultimately we had to create the foundation ourselves with the single mission of helping communities raise money for their high school and college shooting teams. That's how it started 15 years ago. Actually, there's $250 million of endowed money in it today that no team will ever get because we won't let them have it, but they do get 5% a year forever. And that was the purpose of it, to create a permanent endowment to change the future literally forever. And Brenda's got a line on this that's different than what we ever envisioned. So we envision changing the future of the world through youth shooting sports. Brenda sees it as changing the future of human beings. So as a mother would look at that and talking to other mothers at the shooting events we go to. So Brenda, why don't you talk about that?
My favorite story is a mother who came to me in Marengo, Ohio, and said, my son hated high school. He wasn't tall enough to be a basketball player. He wasn't heavy enough to be a football player. He didn't fit in. And he found the shooting team. And that team became his family. And he started shooting and shooting well. And he had a group that he could meet with at lunch and that he could practice with, and a coach that supported him. And it became to a point where he loved going to school. So not only did we help that team, but we helped that individual grow and become more satisfied in his life. And I think that, yes, we help teams, but the individual child who needs some place to belong all of a sudden can shoot and have a place to belong. Even if they're not athletic and on the field and doing all the things that the jocks do, they still can participate and be a team.
We run several features in America's First Freedom, and it's mostly been young girls saying how it saved them.
Yeah.
It brought them in, built them up, and helps them focus and become the stronger, better person. Yeah, my New York high school got rid of its shooting team 10 years before I went to high school. Boy, I wish they had one. I got to do it in college.
I think at least our vision is with these 2,800 teams forming kind of the nucleus, as you get a conference, an 8-team conference, for instance, and 4 of the schools have shooting teams, that's going to influence the rest of the conference to have shooting teams. And we do envision have just a little bit of it starting today to where there is a conference shooting schedule, because all the teams there, I think this is in Wisconsin or Minnesota, are all the schools in the conference have shooting teams, and they compete there the same as they do in basketball and football and track and so on.
Important stuff. Now, I got corrected by someone on your staff. I thought you'd only won 2 Baldrige Awards. I heard you won 3 for your business. Can you tell us about Midway USA a little bit and what you're up to?
My personality is one of always figuring out what the right thing is to do and then to do it. So we started the business in '77, and it's a business and it's new and you've never run a business before. What's the right thing to do? And of course, it's serving customers, dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. Well, as you start growing and hiring people, how do you get people to dot the I's and cross the T's and thank customers? That's the hard work of running a business that nobody really understands how hard that is. So you need a lot of written documentation, you need a lot of training. Really, really hard. Human beings aren't wired for that, for written documentation and training. It's a verbal world, as you know. Somewhere along the line, we came to understand that Baldrige is a tool that basically promotes leadership and management practices, and that if you will line yourself up with the Baldrige criteria and actually go ahead and apply for the Baldrige Awards, that you're going to learn something about leadership and management. So we applied for and won the first one, I want to think 2008 maybe. After you win the award, you have to wait 5 full calendar years before you can apply again. You can apply in the 6th year. So here the first one was 8, the second one I believe was 15. We were eligible again in 2021 and applied for and won that 3rd award then. We only applied 3 times, 8, 15, and 21. So we never had to go through the cycle again and again, like taking a CPA exam or a law exam. So we won 3 Baldrige Awards now. The only company in America to ever win one on 3 applications. There's a company in Tulsa, Oklahoma that also has 3, but not quite the same way we got there. So it's been a super, super important tool for Midway and its continuous improvements efforts, in its documentation and training efforts, and serving customers, because that's what all businesses are there for. So super duper tool for us.
Now, you've also won our Pioneer Award from NRA Publications for all you do, and I see you're wearing your Gold Ring of Freedom jacket.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the story behind it?
There were 4 given as this was created. And I don't remember the place, but our friend down in Bristol, Tennessee, what's his name?
I don't remember.
We've forgotten that part. Worked with Wayne to create the Golden Ring of Freedom as an activity inside of NRA to basically to promote giving to the NRA, supporting the NRA. So we were one of the inaugural people in there. Well, we got 2 of the first 4 jackets, I guess. Brenda thinks that red is better on a lady than gold. So, but I wear it almost all the time when I'm coming to trade show events. And if I have a speaking activity there, I tell people that the NRA gave us these jackets because we give them a lot of money, and we wear it hoping other people will see it and do the same thing. So I'm just an ambassador for the NRA in that respect, because, I mean, we wouldn't be in business. We certainly wouldn't be in an interview like this if it weren't for the NRA protecting that Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. So there's nothing in the industry more important than the right to keep and bear arms, and NRA is the foremost guardian of that. So it's an easy decision.
Now, on that note, when I speak to you here, I feel a lot of love for freedom, a lot of hope for our freedom. What advice would you give to somebody else who wanted to follow in your example, even a little bit?
Well, we have 6 grandkids, have 2 children, 6 grandkids. They all like to pull the trigger. Okay. So it's one thing that they have a right to pull the trigger. It's another thing that Grandma and I are helping promote that in the family. I think in our industry, everyone would be envious of a family that all likes to pull the trigger, all has something in common, all likes to hunt and shoot. We have that because of the NRA, and we have that because of Brenda and my personal involvement in the shooting sports industry and the love of the shooting sports industry. So to the extent that we are a positive example, and I hope we are, we're a positive example because we can and because we love it and we promote it everywhere we go.
Yes, sir. And thank you. And thank you again for all you do.